Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. That's my guy. He's 53 years old. He is a husband. He's been married for 20 some years. He's a father, 18-year-old son. And he shares his story how 30 years ago or so, he was a guitarist in a band. And they would obviously travel all about. He had that cool life. And in his travels, obviously he met a lot of women. But he met one girl who, for lack of a better term, was a bit on the groupie side, who he thought was sent from heaven, was amazing, a 10, all that, and tried to turn an HOE into a housewife, or in this case, HOE into a girlfriend, and learned the hard way it doesn't work that way. And I'll be going to go over here, guys, as a refresher about how so many young guys, all it takes is one chick who just, whatever it is about her, she checks off everything on the checklist for you, does it for you in that way, and a guy can completely lose all sense of reality and common sense, and it completely just, his life turns into a living HELL from her, and how you just cannot allow that to happen. You have to use common sense, you have to be smart about things, and look at the big picture, and not ignore red flags, most many other things. And if you go down that path and you don't listen to those that are more experienced, you're going to deal with a whole lot of suffering. But don't worry, our guy will redeem himself in the end. He says, Dear SSM, I hope this message finds you well. I've been a fan of your channel since earlier this year, so I figured it's time I share my own experience. When I was young and quite naive, I was in a toxic relationship with a hot blonde. Bro, we've all been in a toxic relationship with a hot blonde. Why do you think everybody's here? Suffice to say, I learned some valuable lessons. To begin with, I am 53, who is married to my wife of 21 years, and we have an 18-year-old son who just started college. But the story takes place back in the 90s. Back then, I was a 20-something, young man with aspirations of becoming a musician, more specifically a guitar player for a rock band. I'm originally from Kansas City, and the music scene was pretty cool there. But I knew LA was the place to be, so I saved a bit of my money and took the plunge. He says, let me tell you, LA back in the 90s was something else. Words cannot describe it. You had to be there to really get it, but it was wild. I will say it was the hardest time of my life, and in fact, I left after a few short years because I realized it wasn't for me. I ended up in Nashville, and after a lot of hard work and much needed luck, found work as a touring musician. Yeah, I think Nashville would be more my style, thank you very much, than LA. My family left LA in 1987. My dad saw the writing on the wall, says, okay, time to get out of here. Now, as a touring musician, life is pretty grueling. The way it works is you get referred to or invited to try out for a gig. If they like you, they offer you a limited contract, and then you work for one day, or it could be several days to weeks on the road. We're talking long hours on tour buses, hotel stays, and sometimes flights, and even international travel. Well, that sounds pretty cool if you're a young man with not attached to anything. Meanwhile, you have to learn every song in the artist's catalog. And then there are the shows. Every show is different, and you have to be prepared for anything, even getting fired. The one constant are adoring fans, especially girls if the artist you're working for is a heartthrob. You have to realize there are local beauties from every town living mundane, boring lives. So when they see that tour bus arrive, it's an escape, a fantasy, and perhaps an opportunity. Yeah, you musicians got it made. You can be butt ugly and still be chicks that want to do you. They get all dolled up, hoping someone will notice. And when you're on stage, everyone believes you're famous and also wealthy, which is the furthest thing from the truth. In actuality, most touring musicians are paid an average of $300 per night. In a week, that might be 1 or 2 nights, depending on how far the next town is. Well, are you talking about $300 a night in 2024 money, or are you talking about $300 a night in 1997 money? Obviously, 1997 money is much more purchasing power. Anyway, we were doing a show about an hour from where I grew up. It was a mid-sized town, and we had a good turnout, so management arranged an after-party. The road crew had given passes to all the pretty girls, so there was no shortage of hot gals. At this point, I was still pretty green, but had learned to keep a low profile. I didn't normally attend these events, but on this occasion, I needed a drink badly. I was hanging out at the bar when a beautiful woman approached me. Yeah, if you're this guy or other guys in the band, it's probably like literally shooting fish in a barrel to get hot chicks for a one night, you know? She said, well, hello, aren't you the guitar player? Let's call her Jessica. Oh, what an appropriate name. And boy, was she stunning. She was something out of a centerfold, wearing a tight black dress, revealing all her natural assets. She had a great tan and bleached blonde hair, and her southern accent made me melt. She was a 10 in my book, and I fell hopelessly in love with her. Smack! Bro, for God's sakes, I'm sure you had plenty of TNA in your travels that some hot girl comes up to you and you're not going to just go bananas over her, but I guess, like, literally she was, all the checks on the checklist were with this particular chick. As soon as we began flirting, I was the one begging her to go back to my room, which surprisingly she agreed to. Smack! I'm going to guess you weren't actually, like, begging, but pretty much in other ways you were seemingly begging. Bro, she approached you. You don't have to beg her to do shit. You don't have to do shit, and she's going back to your room anyway. The truth is, I knew the stayed longer and we stayed at the party, the more likely it was for someone who actually was famous and wealthy to steal her away. Well, in hindsight, it would have probably been a good idea. Funny enough, she told me she didn't sleep with anyone on the first night, but we ended up doing the deed. What a load of crap. Everybody here is laughing at that statement. Many of us have been there with a girl who embarking on doing the deed would say something to the effect of, I never do this. I never give BJs. I never do this on the first date. You know, making you feel like you're special. And you're just like, uh-huh. Next morning, we hung out a bit, and she showed me the town and where she worked. She was a waitress at a well-known establishment that features an owl, if you catch my drift. Oh, Hooters. There's a surprise. That's a great girlfriend material. Not that I have anything against it, I'm simply pointing it out. Throughout this time, she had a starstruck look in her eyes, but what she didn't know was my heart was racing the entire time. In my young, naive mind, she was the one, because it wasn't going to get better. Smack! That's a stupid attitude to have about yourself. Come on, man. Really? She's the best it can be. It's never going to get better. Of course things can always get better. You just got to make things get better. Of course I had to get back on the tour bus, but the rest of the trip was me thinking about Jessica. Oh, for goodness sake. When I got home, the first thing I did was go see Jessica. We had been calling each other regularly, so each time I was not touring, I would visit her. I admit I was madly in love with her, and that was the only thing on my mind. Smack! God's sakes. I know he knows this now, guys, but I'm going to give it to him anyway because, well, that's what I do, and I got to make the point clear for the young guys out there. You know, I guess I'm going to be 47 in a few months. I can say us older guys here, we've been there. We've been goo-goo gaga over girls when we were in our teens and 20s. Shit, maybe some of you in your 30s. But at this point, you just know there's plenty of options out there, and you don't get too attached. Anyway. This caused me to ignore every red flag. For example, the first time I arrived, she commented that my car was a piece of junk. I drive a used 1990 Ford Escort, and she kept asking why I didn't bring the Porsche Mercedes. I thought she was just joking. Gold digger. Hey, if you love your beat-up piece of junk Ford Escort, then so the fuck what? Who cares? We kept our long-distance relationship going for about 4 months, until she asked to move in with me. 4 months. First of all, you shouldn't have done a long-distance relationship. You should have had your night of fun with her and said something to the effect of, like, hey, the next time I'm in the area, maybe you stop by, and that's that. There should have been no long-distance relationship. And smack for that, because I know some of you guys are going to comment if I don't smack him for the long-distance relationship. But moving in after 4 months, you nuts? I told her, sure, but I'll be gone a lot. That didn't deter her, though. She quit her job, packed up her belongings, and I picked her up in a U-Haul. I briefly met her parents and siblings, and then we left. When we got to my place, she was shocked I live in a small one-bedroom apartment. Yeah, in her mind, they used to have plenty of dough. Again, the Mercedes or whatever car she mentioned, the Porsche or the Mercedes, she said. You're living in at least a house that has multiple rooms or something, but nope. I told her we could move to a better place once she found a job and could help out. That's the moment I realized I might have made a mistake. She got very upset. Apparently she thought I was pretending to be poor and had been waiting for the right moment to unveil my mansion and expensive cars. She honestly thought I was testing her. Bro, this is what you get for not looking at the big picture. This is what you get for maybe not consulting other guys that have been around the block. Other musicians that have been on the road before. I'm sure you had to have other musicians that are older than you, been around the block that said, watch out for these girls at these concerts that are smoking hot, willing to spread them legs and do whatever you want, and don't go falling in love with them. Right here, ignoring all the red flags. Things quickly went south. She didn't look for her job, shocker, because she said our neighborhood looked dangerous, which it was. We did live in a pretty sketchy part of town, but from Wednesday through Saturday, I was mostly gone, so I would call her every night to check up. However, she never picked up, even though she was supposed to be home. Then I began to notice things. Of course, why would she be? She's finding your replacement, someone that can give her the lifestyle that she feels that she's entitled to, because after all, in her mind, she's a smoking hot blonde that you, like many other guys, just dropped everything you were doing, all common sense and everything, to be with her. She's going to find your replacement monkey branch. One time I found a used condom while emptying the trash from the bathroom. It was a brand I didn't use. Why aren't you kicking her out at this point? Now, I know every state's different with regards to residency and all that shit, but still. Another time I came home and our bedroom had a strange odor. I asked her about it and she said she'd been exercising. My suspicion was growing, but I kept making excuses for her because she was so beautiful. Smack! Again, you're a traveling musician with a band. There's TNA everywhere. What's so special about this one? A few months later, I was on a long gig. We were 2 weeks into a 3-week tour when the artist or singer had a problem with her voice. Usually when this happens, the rest of the band tries their best to compensate, but this time she couldn't push through. After the show, the tour manager announced all dates were canceled until further notice. That sucks. When I got home, I heard Jessica laughing in our backyard. This was strange to me, as she never really spent time without me, so I quickly ran out to see what was happening. To my surprise, she was sitting next to a man I had never seen before. When she saw me, she acted like it wasn't a big deal. So not only is she cheating on you regularly, and the signs are there and you haven't gotten rid of her yet, but now you come home and there's a guy there and she knows. She knows you're so in love with her. She knows that she can do anything and you're not going anywhere. And right here, she's just rubbing in your nose. Remember I tell you all the time that women don't respect weakness, weak men that don't stand up for themselves. And when women have the leverage in the relationship, as in the guy's more into it than she is, if she's a piece of garbage and has no good qualities, she'll make the guy's life a living hell. And oh yeah, by the way, you met her at the end of a concert. She's a groupie type. She was like, oh hey, you're home. Come here. This is my friend from back home. His name is Brad. Brad nodded and said, hey man. And I just said, hey. And we proceeded back into the apartment. Meanwhile, they continued laughing and talking loudly. After a quick shower and change of clothes, I went back out and pulled up a seat. I motioned for Jessica to join me, and she seemed to hesitate for a moment, before scooting her chair next to mine, and then cradling my arm. I then proceeded to ask Brad questions about who he was and his relationship with my girlfriend. He was a big guy, compared to me at the time. I was 5'10" and 160, soaking wet, and this guy was probably 6'3", 200 pounds, and well-built. He wore a navy polo shirt with tan slacks, and I could tell he came from money by the way he flaunted his Rolex and jangled his BMW keys. Don't you just always want to punch those douchebags in the face? They're deliberately making sure you see their watch. Oh, let me get this for you, and making sure you see it, or pulling out the keys every time they can so you can see the BMW insignia or the Mercedes, whatever, But what bothered me most was each time he gave me an answer, Jessica would chime in like she already knew his life story. For example, he said he worked for his dad's plastic manufacturing company, and Jessica excitedly nodded, yeah, his dad just made him chief operations officer. The way they were in sync made me think they were more than friends. Gee, you think? I asked outright, did you guys date? And both of them, as if on cue, stated, no, we're just friends. Our families know each other. Uh-huh. Define friends. Friends with benefits? It became uncomfortable, so Brad took his leave, and that started a big fight. Jessica intended to give him a big hug before leaving, but I squeezed her arm like, not while I'm here. So she broke free and hugged him anyway. Of course she did. Oh, here come the sirens. As soon as he was out the door, she turned to me and started going off, saying I had embarrassed her in front of her friend, and she began throwing and breaking things. Bro, I don't feel bad for you in the least. Younger you. Why? Well, you know why. Because you had every fucking sign from the universe, or God, whoever you want to, Crom, the Great Spirit, whatever, showing you this girl was trash, not good for you, nothing, and still, you kept her around. And of course she was throwing shit and screaming and yelling and, because in her mind, she can do it. She's hot. You're head over heels for her. This is why the biggest difference between nice guys and bad boys, and I say this all the time, is this. Nice guys will never check their girl because they're terrified she'll get mad at them and leave them. Bad boys will check them all the time, put them in their place because she leaves, so what? I'll replace her ass in a heartbeat. And also, nice guys will always put everybody else's needs, her needs, ahead of his. Bad boys put themselves first. A chick like this only would respond to and be tamed by a bad boy. I had a Guild D40 acoustic guitar I kept in the living room. It's a relatively expensive guitar. She knocked it over and the top cracked. Oh, no, she didn't. I lost at this point and told her to get the hell out. Next thing I know, Big Brad's BMW is back and Jessica runs out to him. That ain't the first time Big Brad came to the rescue. They leave together and my heart just breaks. I fall to pieces like I made a huge mistake. Dude, you made a Grand Canyon-sized mistake in terms of choosing her, not, throwing her out. The next few days, I was calling her parents and anyone who knew where she might be. No, she ain't calling you. They wouldn't give me Brad's number or tell me where he lived, so I was stuck in my mind thinking about what they were doing. It drove me nuts. Yep, I was really stupid back then. Yeah, you get the stupid award. Then one evening, someone buzzed my door. I pressed the intercom and to ask who it was, and a familiar voice replied, "It's Jessica." I let her in, and we continued like nothing had happened. Smack! What the hell is the matter with you? Please email me more. You know what? No. You should have given the community here more details as to what it was about her that really roped you in. Yeah, you said she had a great body and blonde hair, bleached blonde hair, but there's more details that you're leaving us hanging, man. You could have given us more details as to what it was about her. But I'm sure what it was about her that got you in the beginning, you weren't getting now. You let this crazy bitch in who broke your guitar. So I let her in and we acted like nothing happened. Oh, so what great communication. Actually, if I recall, we had SCX and then went out to dinner. Yeah, that's how she's getting back into your good graces, by getting back into your good graces the way she got you in the first place. That's her only card to play. She wouldn't say why she was back or anything, so I didn't press her. I did tell her from now on, no more male friends are allowed in my apartment. She agreed, and our relationship went on. Number one, good luck in that happening. Number two, she's probably like, okay, she'll go to their apartment. And for a while, everything was cool. Jessica got a job at a bookstore, and I was getting more gigs. She got a job at a bookstore. I have a hard time believing she can even read. So at least we were financially stable. But then I began to notice odd things again. Here's the thing. I was very aware of odometer readings, because some gigs required me to drive my own car. This meant I had to record my miles for reimbursement, and I became very good with knowing how many miles it takes to get somewhere. When I noticed Jessica was gone for an unusual length of time, especially considering that she worked nearby, I began to check her odometer readings. Her job was no more than 10 miles away, and yet I would see readings that showed that she had traveled over 100 miles in one day. Doing the math, I knew she was going back home, and that meant only one thing: she was seeing Brad. So notice it was her going to Brad, not Brad going to her. Shocker. At this point, we were 11 months into our relationship, and I finally had enough. About fucking time. I just come home from a gig and she wasn't there, despite her shift ending hours ago. Therefore, I went to the store, bought a bunch of boxes, and packed up her stuff. Nice. Close to midnight, I heard the keys unlock the door. When she walked in, all her stuff was packed and labeled. I was sitting on the couch and told her we were finished. She acted all innocent, like, "What's this? What's going on?" To which I replied, "Come on. I'm tired of this stupid game. We both know where you were, just stop it." I told her a lie to catch her in a lie, and it worked. I said, "I wrote down your domino readings this morning, and you're going to tell me you drove 200 miles to work and back?" Before she could say anything, I also stated, "And I talked to your mom and dad today, you didn't visit them." That's when she knew the jig was up. She buried her face in her hands and began crying. Hoe Bag Handbook, Chapter 2. Of course she's crying. And in her mind, this dumb asshole is going to fall for it again. And in between she said, "He's just a friend and he needed me." I only laughed and said, "Well, now he can have you." But at the same time, I felt tears in my eyes and did my best to hide my emotions. I knew this was the end of my fantasy relationship. Oh my God. Dude, if you had a really good girl, and there are some out there, guys, and things ended for reasons like, she had to move across country because her parents are sick to care for a loved one, or some reason other than how they behave in these stories, then I could understand, try to hold back some tears, but you had a really good thing going, you loved her. But if she's a fucking piece of garbage, why would you cry over that? Obviously, it was a bigger issue here. She went from sobbing to throwing a fit, so I called the police. I told the police I needed someone to witness my girlfriend leaving since we were breaking up and her name was not on the lease. Dude, there's an area you're making up for your dumbass ways. Very smart. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived and informed Jessica she had to vacate the premises. The whole time she was calling me a poser and a fake rock star. Don't fall for it, man. She wants to start a fight. I didn't respond to any of that. I simply told her I would have a UPS pick up the rest of her things and send them to her parents' house. I have not heard from her since. Thank the Lord. It only takes 20-some minutes for you to get to this point. A few years later, I moved back to my hometown and got a job working in plastic, of all things. I started as a machine operator, but now I'm a supervisor in a company that makes plastic bags and labels. I've been at it for over 20 years and don't regret a thing. Music is still my life, but as a hobby, not as a career. But what my life has taught me is that we have to be grounded in real things, not fantasy. In my youth, I had a vision of a beautiful trophy wife while living in a mansion, but that's not realistic. That's what happens when we become infatuated with things in the media. The reality is, life is tough and full of nasty things we have to navigate properly to find our place. Only when we appreciate our self-worth do we become truly free of unwanted drama. Stay strong, and many thanks for hearing me out. Well, man, that was quite a story, and, there are a lot of lessons there about red flags, not letting your head going crazy over some pretty girls paying attention to you, and you have to accept some reality. But here's the deal. I got no problem when you were in your 20s going for it. You love music, you love being in a band, so I think that's cool. So I have no problem doing what you did. And, obviously that wasn't your path in life to become a rock star or anything like that, but at least you got to have quite a life for a while traveling. I think that's pretty badass. And if it took that bad experience with her to teach you a bunch of things you said in the beginning of the story here, you've been married for like 20-some years, you got an 18-year-old son. I'm assuming it's been a good marriage. So if it took going through all that shit to teach you some lessons to ensure that you've had a good marriage, any marriage, 20-some years, you're going to have disagreements and ups and downs, but hopefully good. That made that work, then okay. Some good came out of that shitty situation. And you sharing this story can warn young guys about being just so infatuated in awe of some pretty girl with the bleached blonde hair and big boobs who works at Hooters, who you think is a 10, and just throwing all common sense and reality out the window to get some ass. That's crazy, but a lot of young guys do that. So, a lot of lessons there. But anyhow, bro, now that you're in your 50s, you never know. Maybe now that your son is out of the house, maybe, who knows, you might do some play in some local bands. Who knows? I'm sure you can still play. I'm sure you still love music, and maybe once a month or something you work with a local out. Who the hell knows? But there are options there. You just never know in life, man. So don't totally give up everything in terms of that dream. Some people hit it big later in life, but at least you learned a lot in the situation, and it sounds like you got a happy life and you're comfortable. So I'm glad for that. So you redeemed yourself in the end. But my God, what you had to go through to see reality. And gals like that never change. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.